Hello again. Welcome to this, our final session of our conference. And this session is entitled Building Crip Communities. My name is Kate Marsh. I am a white Crip woman in her mid-40s. I have long brownish hair, which is tied up in a plait and hanging at one side of my face. I am wearing a green t-shirt and I'm sitting up in bed propped up by a big cushion. I am an artist researcher based in the UK.
And I'm Noa Winter. I'm a white, queer, disabled, chronically ill curator, and I'm based in Berlin, Germany. And today I'm, basically as always, sitting on my bed with two big cushions in my back, leaning against a piece or a white wall piece that is between the two windows of my room. So you can also see the plants and candles I have in front of the windows, and also have a little sneak into my backyard. I am one of the two project leaders of Making a Difference, which is a Berlin-based project that seeks to empower disabled and deaf performers and choreographers. And this conference is part of the project Making a Difference. And over the last 5 days, we just saw this incredible opportunities that this conference opened up to bring together local and international arts workers, activists, audiences, and start building connections and collaborations between different individuals and communities. And so, I'm very much looking forward to this session that at the end of this conference brings us back to the topic of community building and how we can do that in a quick way, in an intersectional way. So I'm really excited.
Me too, Noa. So just a couple of words on discrimination. We are aware of multiple forms of discrimination, and we do not allow any kind of discriminating behaviour. For example, ableism, racism, transphobia. We reserve the right to remove individuals who behave in a discriminatory manner and ban them from all further events. You can always contact Noa or our tech support team if you experience discrimination. Please also respect that language can be diverse. Let's all respect the language we choose to identify, for example, our pronouns, but also be aware of the language we use to talk about disability. For example, why we use and what we mean by Crip. Noa and I identify with Crip identity. We find it an empowering word that enables us to locate ourselves in communities of activism and ways of being in the world that do not try to conform to ableist norms. And this is a term that we and others will use throughout the session. We respectfully understand that this term is not used by all of us and that there is ongoing discussion around its use.
This conference is also a relaxed space. That means there are no expectations, no dress code, but a really warm welcome to us all, and especially also to you as an audience, for be with us in ways that might be perceived non-normative or not fitting into the expectation of a conference or the audience. We have invited you to join from your beds, or just any place where you feel comfortable and have internet access. It's also a real permission to rest. And of course, we can't decide that for you, but we want to invite you to give yourself the permission to rest. So grab this extra cushion or this warm blanket, a cup of tea, bring your stimming toys, your knitting, and especially important, take a break whenever you need it and don't feel like you have to apologize for that. This space is for you, so take your time. Access is a real priority to us, so we also, of course, have to acknowledge that already the digital framework is involving barriers for some people. But on the other hand, and at the same time, every day during this conference and this evening as well, I've seen names of people popping up in the audience where I know that they wouldn't have been able to join us if this conference was happening remotely. We know that we won't be able to meet all access needs equally at all times, but if there is an access issue, for example, with the interpretation, please let us know. We really want to know, and then take the time and find a solution together. So, and now finally, it is my pleasure to welcome our guests, the fabulous artists behind Criptonite, Nina Mühlemann and Edwin Ramirez. Yes, they already joined us on the virtual Zoom stage. Hello, it's so good to see you. Would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much, Noah and Kate, for having us at this wonderful symposium. So I will start. My name is Nina Mühlemann. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Crip queer disabled artist and scholar, and I am a white femme. I am a wheelchair user. I have a round body, and I have shoulder-length brown wavy hair with some blonde streaks. Today I'm wearing some red lipstick and holographic jellyfish earrings that are about the size of my thumb, a little bit bigger, and blue overalls and a pale blue t-shirt underneath. And I am huddled with Edwin together on my sofa.
This is Edwin speaking. My name is Edwin Ramirez. I am also a queer Crip artist and stand-up comic. I am a short brown person with a long black dark-haired afro, and I'm wearing a prominent silver septum piece in my on my nose. And I am also a wheelchair user, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you both for this introduction. That reminds me that I forgot to mention in the audio descriptions, I basically have matching earrings with Nina, because to her jellyfish, I bring my octopus tentacles. So I think that's really nice. And I already announced that you are the artist behind Criptonite. So to kick us off in our conversation, could you tell us a little bit about your shared artistic practice, and especially about your shared artistic practice with Criptonite?
So this is Edwin speaking. By the way, my pronouns are they, them, or he, him. I forgot that earlier. with Criptonite, we have, or our goal is to create a theater project by and for Crips. Which that is super important to us because in Switzerland, where we are based, actually, like the most, if not all, theater productions that involve Crips are led by non-disabled people. And while some of those can be great and even empowering, we feel like it is super important to keep in mind that that creates a power imbalance, and it's a special thing to especially when it comes to like creating spaces for Crips and nurturing other Crips, to make sure that everything is considered from a Crip perspective, top down, and yeah, that is super important to us.
Yeah. So as Edwin said, so I mean, with Criptonite, what we have done, it's a series of shows that we have put on at a local theater in Zurich, Gessnerallee. And each one of our shows had a theme. And so we had a theme, we had Switzerland as a theme, particularly the Swiss brand of ableism, which is a particular brand of ableism. We had a show about slow animals, and we had one about inspiration and superpowers. And so with each one of those shows, Edwin and I create a frame or several scenes that we perform and come up with. So that can be a mix of like drag, songs, texts we have written,
lip syncs, most of them, or a lot of them inspired by like queer
pop culture. Yeah. And also like it can be characters that we play, or we can be playing ourselves. It can be also personal. And then within that platform or within that world that we create, we make an effort to invite other disabled and sometimes non-disabled artists, because we also want to be inclusive. And we also make a particular effort that some of these artists are newcomers, meaning that they're disabled people who actually haven't had much opportunity to perform or to try things out artistically. This is Nina speaking, by the way. And for those newcoming artists, we also organize peer-to-peer coachings by more established disabled artists, because here in Switzerland, we really have very few opportunities for disabled people to try out the arts, except in frameworks that are like I don't even know how you call that, but like a setting that is specifically for disabled people, led by non-disabled people, in like a charity framework, I would say. Yeah. And so that is like one of the main avenues, or it's like non-disabled star choreographers or star directors who want to try something new and embellish their productions with some non-disabled people. And those are like the main avenues to working in that field. And so we, with Criptonite, we are trying to provide a space where it's a different work, a different space for us to work and to try things out artistically, but then also for other people.
Yes, because this is Edwin speaking. Because when you look at the roles those scripts are given in those productions, they come from a place that can be fetishizing, they can be exoticizing, and with us it's really important that the Crips get to talk about what they want to talk about in a way that makes them feel empowered. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds really exciting. I mean, I have seen some of your shows, especially because you made your last shows accessible in live streams. So I can really recommend people checking out your work. And
yes, this is Nina speaking. So also for anyone who hasn't seen any of our shows, we have really good video recordings of the last two ones. So if you would like those to be sent to you, because we don't just share the link, but we are very happy to send out the links to whoever would like them. So then please get in touch.
Take that chance. Definitely take that chance. Kate, handing over to you.
Thank you, Noah. Just to jump in, this is Kate speaking. I think one of the things that was really interesting to Noah and myself, and that we talked about a lot, and it's funny because we talked about it just as we got together before opening the session, because it's been very meaningful for Noah and I to curate this conference together as two Crip artist curators. And I think we've both, I won't talk for both of us, but I have certainly found such empowerment and comfort and care and relief in working alongside someone when I never need to explain and I never expect explanation. And it's made it such a wonderful way of working together that we've kept deadlines loose where we can, and we've understood each other's personal situations and made space for that. And I think we were very drawn to the two of you in that respect. And had we not been in a pandemic, our dream was that we would be in bed together in Berlin and you would be on a sofa or in bed wherever you are. And I think my question is really around, I mean, we know the work is wonderful, and Noah and I have so much love and respect for both of you. And I agree with Noah that everybody should look at your work and experience it. But I wonder if you can just say something about, why the two of you? What does that mean? Where is that meaningful for you? And how does that speak to nurturing and growing community?
Yes, thank you, Kate. This is Nina speaking. So first of all, I've also put the link to our Instagram in the chat. It's at criptonite.insta if you want to get in touch somehow. That's one of the ways. I think for us it was really important because we actually met or got to know each other properly by working together on a different project that was initiated by a non-disabled artist who shall not be named in this space. But there, Edwin and I kind of discovered that it's really fruitful or interesting for us to look at themes together and to actually develop those from both of the space that we share as disabled people, from the experiences that we share, but then also from our differences. And that this has been actually really, really helpful for us and kind of made our creative practice really interesting. That we will have, for example, like in one of our shows, we're thinking a lot about movements. Neither of us are like dancers or trained dancers at all. And so it was our first show. We actually really worked with movement, and particularly also we're thinking about like things like crawling or sliding on floors. And we both have we both have been crawling a lot as children. That was for both of us, our main mode of moving. But then also we have very different relations to that. And so for us, it's been really, with Criptonite, we have created a really safe space to look at those things and to develop them, and then to find a a way of sharing those things that doesn't feel exploitative. So we can just share them to the point that we're comfortable with. But then also through talking about these things with each other and exploring them together, it also pushes us in a certain way that actually feels very good and generative, where we actually want to look at those differences and also highlight that even though we're both disabled people, we are different in many ways.
Yeah, this is Edwin speaking, and I would add to that because we got to know each other in the context that we know it, we got to know each other from the previous work. For us, it was super important to create an environment where all of us feel safe, where also where our disabilities aren't being exploited or used to elicit certain emotions, and that is also like, so neither of us are trained actors, but we both found such joy in the theater space, in creating these performances, and we wanted to give more or open that space up for other Crips. And so the idea of bringing in other Crips and guaranteeing their safety so they can do their best work, or even find out what they want to do, without just, because usually there's this thing where it was certainly also like that for me when I was less experienced. I would just be grateful for every opportunity that I got, and that makes one really, really vulnerable to exploitation. And it also it took me a while to figure out, okay, what do I actually want to do? And with Criptonite, we want to create an environment where the safety is guaranteed, so people are free to explore and to be artistic, and because it's super empowering and super fun and super healing. So yeah.
I think it's Kate speaking again. I think in a moment I would like, if Noah agrees, I'd like you to talk more about this, what it means to create a safe space, as in what that feels like. But before that, I really want to acknowledge, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, that I think as Crip artists or Crip people or disabled people, we operate in normative frameworks that don't acknowledge our many differences. So we are often categorized as disabled, Crip, whatever language gets put on us or is used to discuss us, and it leaves very little room for nuance or for talking about this. For me, this has been very important in my work as a Crip artist. Where are the places where we can acknowledge our sameness and our difference at the same time? And that feels super important to me. So I really thank you for bringing that up. And I also think for me that even speaks of an environment where we're not working or making work in lovely, therapeutic, don't we all feel brilliant, that in these collaborations, it's also difficult and uncomfortable sometimes, and we disagree and we navigate and negotiate around these differences and these samenesses, and that's so important for me to acknowledge. So thank you for bringing that in. So if Noah agrees, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about what these safe spaces feel like for you, or these safer environments, if that feels okay.
Yes, maybe I want to add one sentence, because maybe I would say, because Nina and Edwin, you work together, Kate and I have worked together for this conference, but also to acknowledge that Nina and I have also collaborated in creating a symposium back at the end of 2019, which was also in the framework of an inclusive festival that was been there for many years, even decades, but we were the first team of two disabled artists / scholars who have been leading on that symposium in the whole history. And what I would say about the work with Nina and about the work with Kate, which is linking to what you described, Kate, I would maybe say it was the most complex work I did, but also the most fulfilling one, because there actually was space for, the difficult discussions, but not like the normal difficult discussions we have about, oh, we need basic access and stuff like that, but like the real difficult discussions or difficult things we need to navigate that actually come from our differences and that actually come from when we try to create a room that is for us all from the beginning. So yes, and I think that leads very nicely to this question of, okay, how can spaces feel safe, be safer?
This is Edwin speaking. I think one thing that's really crucial to acknowledge, and that is also something that is super valuable and that I've learned from disability activism, is to keep in mind that our body minds are all different. Even if we might share a medical diagnosis or not, that does not mean that we navigate the world in the same way. And to acknowledge that and to give that space creates also this trust and this intimacy, and it also, like, that's where things get interesting, no? Like we bring this up, we talk about these differences, and then we get to the fun part where we figure out how do we do that artistically, and it's this beautiful thing where giving the other person the space to be themselves then just opens everything up and makes everything all the more beautiful and all the more important. Like you said, Noah, it's not about like, okay, I'm explaining myself again, or I'm presenting my disability to an audience in hopes that they would better understand it. But it's much more about, okay, what happens when we give spaces to these different experiences and just let them be.
So this is Nina speaking. I really agree with everything that Edwin said and that you, Kate, and Noah have said, but also I might now be a bit of a downer in that I also think as beautiful and as important the creation of these safer spaces is, unfortunately the reality, and that was also the reality for our symposium, Noah, that we did together, is that we are actually trying to create these safer spaces within larger institutions, say theaters, festivals, etc., that are ableist, that tend to be not safe for disabled people, and to actually hold that space and to try to create a barrier for those people coming into that space from that institution can be incredibly exhausting and draining, and it's very important work. It's also work that we both love doing, but I also wish we wouldn't have to do it to such an extent. I wish that if we create that space, be it with Criptonite, be it with other types of my work, because almost every type of work that I'm doing, I'm also doing that work in kind of trying to create a safer space within a larger body, a larger institution that is not necessarily safe for disabled people. Wouldn't be so hard. And I really wish there would be more understanding from those institutions of what that actually means, and that they wouldn't create more work in that regard for us and actually support us. And that goes from like technicians to the acknowledgement of what creating access actually means, to the way we communicate, to the way also our project is framed. So I also just feel like, you know, as much as I love talking about like Crip utopias and community building and the way we kind of nourish each other's creativity, that this also is part of that reality.
I think just one comment on that, and thank you, Nina, as Kate speaking. Thank you, Nina, for raising that, because you're reminding me that something I feel often when I am in so-called safe or safer spaces that are within institutions or within normative frameworks, one of the things that can feel really precarious and really unsafe is the temporality of those spaces, that actually we might be offered them for a day or 2 days or 3 days or for a performance, but actually then no, the feeling of I don't know if this translates in German, tokenism, is that, yeah, so the feeling of tokenism can feel really unsafe. So yeah, thank you for raising that point.
It's Noah speaking. Yeah, I would also like to add something to that, because I think what is also important to acknowledge that, because I think all of us are a bit in this role of being community builders in a way, even though communities are built by all of us, but who are like taking responsibility for example, creating a symposium, or like you with Criptonite, creating a show where, as you said, newcomers can have a space. So I think that also, at least in my experience, often means that you are a little bit trying to protect or to shield those people you are bringing in from that, but that often puts more pressure on you than, for example, when leading a symposium, or when you are talking to the theater or the festival where you're showing one of your Criptonite performances, then maybe the other artists involved in this show might not get so much of the pressure from an ableist environment than you as the two people leading on the project might get. And I think the same goes with many projects we do and we try to facilitate. And I think, yeah, that's where I often realize that I need, or we all maybe need to get better in considering that also, what is the impact on us when we are creating this spaces in often non-disabled led environments, let it be theaters or festival, just because often we don't have a choice, because otherwise, I mean, it would be nice if we could choose between a lot of disabled-led, Crip-led festivals and theaters to bring these spaces to, but this is a bit of a gap, or like a big gap in like this theater and performance scene, that, yeah, we often have to be in contact with these non-disabled-led structures to actually make spaces happen.
This is Edwin speaking. The thing is, like, I think the unfortunate reality is that we know how hard ableism hits people the most, and so we are invested in making sure that that does not happen in a way that these theaters or festivals with their ableist structures can't account for or won't account for yet. And so, the amount of pressure that one puts on oneself to do everything right is super real. And I think what we try to do is that we try to be honest with ourselves and tell ourselves, like, hey, this is a process. We are learning. We are coming from our own disabilities and expanding outwards with the people we invite, with the different inputs that we get over the course of these shows. And and to keep that in mind, that also that access isn't static, that access changes, and that the needs can be different from one person to another.
Yeah, I mean, so for our last show with Criptonite in June, what we did for the peer-to-peer coaching, which we have mentioned earlier, this is Nina speaking, sorry. So for that last show, we actually made a call to find up and coming or new disabled artists, because very often in Switzerland, there seems to be a thirst for many people to work with disabled artists for whatever reason. I get calls all the time. People are looking for people and there don't seem to be enough people. And that is a problem because arts education isn't accessible. But then also when I look at most of those calls, I can see why nobody's responding to them, because it usually they say something like, come work with me. I don't care at all about your access requirements. I haven't even mentioned access in the call, and I will pay you next to nothing or nothing to do exactly what I, as a non-disabled star choreographer or star director, say. So that is usually I'm exaggerating, but usually it amounts to that. Yeah, it amounts to that. And I can see why people would not respond to that. So for us, it was very important with that call to make sure to highlight that we will work with you. You don't have to bring any experience with you. You will be paid. We care about your access requirements. We want disabled artists. We don't care what your disability is, as long as you identify all these things. And we had then a lot of really good, interesting responses, and we actually got to select 2 people. They couldn't both receive the peer-to-peer coaching because we didn't have funding for that, but we had two of those people performing in our show, and they both did so amazing. But then I also had like a few weeks before the show, I had a massive emotional breakdown because I myself wasn't in good health. I'm still not in good health. I've had ongoing health issues throughout the last months. And I knew what the work was of creating this kind of safer space for these people who are not used to working in theater, who do not necessarily know what that means, or who might be very nervous about performing, plus putting on our own show or our own scenes within that. And I mean, luckily for us, I have Edwin by my side, and then also we have a really good team where also non-disabled people have now worked with us for a long time and are actually able to take over that work, who are actually being not judgmental about people's access needs, who are willing to learn, who particularly we have been working also with Sophia Neises, an amazing Berlin-based artist and audio description expert. So one of our members of our team is now very knowledgeable in the area of audio description. So for me, also creating the safer spaces, it's been kind of heartening to see that non-disabled people can also really work there as allies and help doing that within our leadership or within and can sit back for a while and listen, and then maybe learn what it takes. And for me, that is what inclusion should probably be, rather than what other people would normally think inclusion is.
You're both it's Kate speaking again. You're reminding me of something that the very, very brilliant Carrie Sandal said at the opening of our conference. I think Carrie is in this meeting tonight. But yay. Carrie spoke about trust. And I think there's something really, really important about the communication we share, and it's not an assumption of lived experience that actually that when the two of you are doing a call out, that there's a trust that the Crip artists that you're inviting in, they know that you get it. They know that the space will be safe, or they know that they will be held, and that their access needs will be met, or at the very least accounted for, and to work through any not problems, that's not the right word, but anything that needs to be worked through. And I've been thinking about that a lot since Wednesday, about what that means for all of us. That I've done that in the UK. I've been brought in to work with essentially non-disabled organisations who've said, can you lead on this project? And all I've done then is contacted all my friends and kind of made sure the call out goes to those places. And the response has come because these people trust me, because they know I wouldn't invite them into something unsafe or that is informed by the ableist tropes that we all know so well around lack of correct payment, addressing of access needs, all those things. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I think there's something very interesting for me in trust, how trust operates in our Crip communities. You can see I keep bringing back to communities. There's the thing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's Noah speaking. I think this trust is a really big issue. So I want to pick up on that thing that Nina said before, how often we get these calls from non-disabled institutions or artists who want to work with disabled people. And not only that, most of them do not mention anything about access or about like any form of awareness around ableism or something. It's also then the question often of navigating this. So do you want to put that out? Because if you would put anything you get out, then people would lose trust. So I think even with making a difference, it's always a way of navigating, because with this project we are trying to build up trust with communities here in Berlin, and of course when we share a call and people make a bad experience in that project or whatever, they come back to us and say, why are you doing that? And of course we cannot guarantee, but I think that's an ongoing process of navigating what we can put out there on the one side. And also for me, one part of that trust work, which is often an invisible and unpaid work, is that when I get a call and I know, okay, especially when it's a big institution, it would actually be good, like for the CV of an artist to be able to, for example, to perform there, but it also comes with them costs. So part of like the invisible labor behind that is also like all these conversations I then have with people of, should I give them your name and this is what you maybe should know about, or also these are the things you should definitely ask for in the first conversation to make sure, or to find out for yourself, because I cannot decide that for you if that is for you a safe environment to work to, or if it's not a safe environment to work to, if you are basically willing to make that exchange of, okay, that comes with a cost, for example, on your access needs, on your health, but I still decide to do that because I know what I'm getting myself into, and I want to have that institution on my CV. Because of course, I think that's also the space all of us are constantly navigating. I think we all worked in working conditions where we knew before it probably wasn't good to us, and we maybe sometimes had to do it because we just need the money, but also sometimes because we needed all the connections and resources and things that come with besides money when working with certain people or certain institutions. But I think in our communities of marginalized and often multiply marginalized people, there is always a lot of invisible labor around actually navigating all these questions, where I now just put very few of them in this room here.
I think, also that for me, like a lot of that is super true. Like the amount of emails that we had to send out, the amount of conversations that we had to have with the main theater that we worked at, but also, and now that we're looking at like different options. But what kind of helps me in a way is that now we've been doing Criptonite for a year, and seeing the response and seeing all these Crips come out and link up with us, be that physically or virtually. Like yesterday there was Zurich Pride, and I actually met a young queer Crip person who was following us on Instagram and was saying how cool we were. And those are the moments for me that like, okay, like what we're doing is cool and it's fulfilling, and we're gonna go through another round of bullshit because the spaces are opening up, or people are actually coming. Like it's showing a sign that stuff is happening. And it doesn't change the fact that it's still a lot of work, that it's still exhausting, and that we still have always to be super careful about our mental health and our resources. But yeah, that's basically my coping mechanism, is seeing all these young Crips come up and just seeing them take the space and or just feeling more confident with who they are. That's what gets me through all this.
Yeah. So this is Nina speaking. I mean, for me as well, like for me, it was super important as soon as I started doing artistic work, because before that I was working in academia only. Now I'm trying to do both. Was to be like, okay, but then like we need to drag as other people with us on stage or even behind the stage, because also we would like to extend this peer-to-peer or these like coaching opportunities within Criptonite, if we can, also to things like dramaturgy or set design. That is one of our next goals, because we believe that also disabled people should also be represented behind the stage, not just where we are visible and can be tokenized in a certain way. So that was very important to me, and it's really, really beautiful to see that people have this trust. And I also had this experience many times, and also I think with the guest performers that we have had, it was very clear that some of them would not have necessarily tried to create these beautiful performances in other contexts. Because there weren't even maybe so many contexts they would have worked in, but also because they wouldn't have felt safe to do that. But then for me, the ongoing issue, and I think also I thought about that in Carrie's beautiful keynote lecture in your symposium, is to somehow not how to keep in mind my own spoons or my own access requirements when also creating space where other people where I take care of other people's resources or other people's access requirements, and how that can be kind of tricky to navigate at times, but also very worth it. And also I think there's a certain kind of Crip magic that really can come from that. That is just the most beautiful thing to me.
It's Noah speaking. I think your last sentence, Nina, was basically the perfect ending of our more closed conversational part. I'm really looking at the time today to not open too late to the Q&A, even though I would like to continue this conversation endlessly. But we kind of experienced during that conference that at the beginning of the Q&A, the audience is very, very shy. But as soon as we come very close to the end, suddenly there are coming lots and lots of questions. So I thought, okay, we start the Q&A now and give a bit of space to the shyness, because I think Kate and I can still continue to let the questions grow. I will quickly do another access announcement, just to make sure that everyone knows how to contribute in the Q&A via Zoom. So if you want to ask a question in sign language or spoken language, you can draw attention to yourself with the raised hand feature. And you can find this feature on the bottom right of your screen under reactions. Or you can also use the keyboard shortcut Alt-Y, or if you're participating in this Zoom with your phone, you can dial the key *9. And this will all lead to raising your hands, and we will then let you enter the discussion via audio and video. But please be aware, I'm just repeating that we are recording this session. So if you make use of the raise hand function and enable your audio and a video, you will be part of the recording. But of course, you can ask a question or make a contribution. It doesn't have to be a question, can be a comment, or anything you want to share without being recorded. You can post your contribution in the chat in either English or German. So, yes. If there is already a raised hand or a question or a contribution in the chat. Not yet.
And please, everybody, feel free, as this is our last session, to comment on anything, to just be in this space of Crip community, and you can share anything that's coming up for you. And I know that Nina and Edwin will be interested to contribute or comment. So it doesn't need to be something we've necessarily spoken about this evening.
Yes, this is Nina speaking. Basically, we just want to talk to you or hear from you. It doesn't even have to be a question. It can just be saying hi. This
is Edwin speaking. We're also big fans of compliments. So you want to keep those coming, feel free, feel empowered to do that.
Wow.
Okay, we have something in the chat from Heidi, and I will just read it out. What do you think Crip artists can do themselves to find more opportunities that are self and welcoming? And Heidi also added, big fan, obviously, smile or wink.
Oh, Heidi. So Heidi was actually one of the performers we found through the call in our last show. And she did a beautiful performance about masking. So we're also big fans. It's like mutual fandom. And I mean, for me, that's a really good question. I mean, for me, the answer specifically was to create those opportunities because I didn't see them. So for me, I tried to get to a point where I have some sort of power to create those opportunities by myself, then taking opportunities that weren't necessarily safe or that didn't necessarily feel good. But I knew that if I kept on doing that, I would maybe be able. So in very practical terms, in Zurich, you cannot even apply for funding if you haven't, for a certain amount of funding that we would need for Criptonite if you haven't been artistic director of another project first. So I could do that because before that, I was artistic co-director of this other project that didn't feel safe. So even like in very practical terms, unfortunately, that is the reality for that. So that's kind of a terrible answer. But then also I would say to try and reach out to Crip artists to really find those connections, to kind of also, because also I think like a lot of more established or well-known Crip artists, they're very, very happy to like coach or to mentor, be that like in official capacity or even just as a friend, other disabled artists. And I think those connections are they certainly have for me been very, very important. So I think to somehow connect with people who are working within the field is certainly a really good way. And obviously now that online access is so much easier, that has become a lot easier to do, especially if you don't live like, for me, it always feels like, for example, if you live in the UK, there are many, many opportunities. I'm sure that's not necessarily as true as I think it is, Kate. But then I feel like if you're in Switzerland where there is nothing, it's certainly helpful to be able to connect digitally or virtually.
This is Edwin speaking. For me, it is something that I'm trying to figure out through my own work. As I'm trying out new projects and going into new spaces, I learn more and more about my access needs, and I try to to be more vocal about them each and every time, because it's a scary thing to do at first, but I've also been surprised by how accommodating people have been. I'm in a new project right now where I introduced the concept of Crip time, and so now people don't feel guilty anymore if they're not on time, for example, because of whatever might have happened. And I will second what Nina said. What if to reach out to established disabled artists, and I mean also feel free to reach out to us. Like we're happy to give our advice, and you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. It's oftentimes it can be like, okay, this is the project, this is the vibe that I get from this. What do you feel like? What do you get from this? And to go from there. and to always also keep the possibility open to change your mind and back out if you have the resources to do so. That's a tricky thing because we're all starving artists and we need the money. Yeah, it's complicated for sure.
This is Nina speaking. I also just want to say quickly that I have made this reference recently to another friend. I don't know who it was, but basically I called it the Noah test, meaning that if Noah says a particular person is good and fun and safe to work with, and that is definitely true. So I think there is also, that is very important work, because quite often, even if people are not safe to work with, it's at least good to know what you're getting into. So I would also say, be not afraid to ask, basically also what Edwin said, to ask other artists or other disabled people, well, this person has asked me to work with them, what was your experience? Because at least then you can prepare yourself for whatever's coming.
Yes.
Noah, sorry, I'm just going to suggest, because there's some comments in the chat, and the first is from lovely Carolina, and then the second is in German. So shall I do Kara's and then?
Yeah, I just want to quickly add to that. Don't think we are not still doing that all the time. We are still doing that all the time, checking in with each other when we are approached about new project. Though that is not something that is just something you should do when it's maybe your first or your second or your third project. I think all of us still do that when we know, okay, I don't know this person, but I know this other Crip artist who have worked with them or might know more. We still do that because that's maybe one of the most valuable tools we have, is actually reaching out to the community and yeah, helping each other out with this piece of information.
Yeah.
So yes, Kate.
No, thank you. That was good to say. So we have a message from Carolina Tejara, who is our wonderful friend and colleague based in Brazil, who spoke for the conference on Thursday, Friday. The days are merging. Cara says, I have been thinking about the idea of community in my country, Brazil. Here it is very much more complicated because for the most part of the people don't have the safe spaces, in a sense to say, space to be recognised in society, especially disabled people. I'm really glad to see this conversation. And then Caro adds that it's more of a comment than a question. And I think it is so important for us to be aware of geographic and global differences in our experiences and how we can kind of share those. And then the next one is in German, Noah, so I will allow you to.
Yes, that is basically more compliments, but of course we also bring in and translate compliments. So I first read it out in German. It's by our lovely colleague Kybra from Germany, who wrote, Danke für euch und eure Arbeit, Nina und Edwin. Ich hoffe, wir lernen uns irgendwann kennen. Danke, Noah und Kate, für diese Konferenz. Es ist unglaublich schön und empowernd, an diesem Gespräch teilgenommen zu haben. Wir haben
Do you want me to translate, Noah?
Do you want to?
No.
Okay, so we're getting thank you for you and your work, Nina and Edwin. I hope we will be able to meet in the future. And thank you, Noah and Kate, for this conference. It's incredibly beautiful and empowering to take part in this conversation. So there's a question.
Yes. Do you want to go ahead?
Do you want to?
I can.
Yes.
So Celine says, thank you for the stimulating conversation. I would like to ask you if you could describe which characteristics of a collaboration are necessary for you to feel safe. Can you say a bit more about this?
Yes, so this is Nina speaking. So thanks so much for all the compliments in the chat. And I also just quickly want to respond to Carolina's comment, because I think it's very important to recognize that we all work in specific cultural contexts, where even like Switzerland, for example, even though we work also a little bit in Germany, again, German context is not quite the same as the Swiss context, etc. And so it's really important to recognize that, and to also recognize from each other that we're working within these, that we have to work in different ways because of different circumstances. Exactly, that are both like individual circumstances, but then also are obviously given by like funding opportunities, the general cultural landscape, all of that. And so I think it's also very important to bring in, when we have the possibility, artists maybe from these other contexts, and to have those conversations for sure.
Right, I would add to that this is Edwin speaking, that like yes to all of that, and also I think it's important to keep in touch with each other and keep each other informed how different things work, because sometimes even an input from a different context can inspire an idea or a new approach to demanding access and safety.
Yeah, and then as we're speaking of safety, so there was this other question about what makes a safe work environment. That is actually, I find that incredibly difficult for myself. Quite often, I think I recognize that too late when it's not safe. Oops. But I would say for sure a recognition of access needs, a certain proactive approach to that, and the willingness for people to learn, and but also to recognize that if they're learning about access and things like Criptime through working with me, through working with us, that this is also work that I'm doing. It's not just like fun necessarily for us to share these things all the time. It's also labor that we're doing. It's also emotional labor. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel the same way. This is Edwin speaking. I feel the same way. Like I often notice when I feel unsafe when it's too late. But like a good indicator for me is if if from the first point of contact I get asked about my access needs, that is a good sign for me. Or also being given like a full picture of like what can I expect, what does a space look like, for example, and all of these can help, and the better I know of the situation, the more that helps. And yeah, it's difficult, and it's also like more of a feeling. I feel like there's the I feel like active intimacy comes to mind, where again this feeling of like, okay, I can state my needs without being judged or something. I feel like that is also something that unfortunately you can only figure out over time. And yeah, it involves a lot of risk taking, and I'm still figuring out how to navigate it.
Thank you, you two. So there's a couple more things in the chat. Get ready.
Do you want to add something to that as well?
Yeah, do.
I really would like, and I would also like to hear what you have to say to that, because I think that's a really important question. Do you want to start or should I?
Are you talking to me or to the other?
To you.
No, you start.
Yes. So, I mean, agreeing to all of that, but what comes in for me as well is like, if the other person has reflected on their privileges, especially when we talk about disability, about non-disabled privileges, and what does that mean? Because what I realized in the last few years, that it's not about how long the person has worked in so-called inclusive settings or whatever. It's if they reflected about non-disabled privileges and ableism. And that could be just since a year, but that can already make me feel safer than a person who have worked for 20 years with disabled people. So yeah, just get into that reflection process that can be difficult for you when you have these privileges, but that is something that is really making me feel safe. And it's often also bound to the second thing that I think is very important for making me feel safe. It's accountability, because things will go wrong, for example, with access. But if I feel then safe or unsafe in the situation is often the difference between people being accountable, admitting they have a mistake, asking how they can do better, than to be like dismissive about it and be like, yeah, but it's just so stressful. We don't have the time for that. We don't have the money for that. So yeah, it's a question of people actually being accountable in that process for where they're standing and for things where they might still make mistakes. So yeah, these are two important things I would like to add to that.
I don't think I have anything particular to add, Noah, because that was really clear. Other than I agree with you that I want the organisations that are non-disabled led to engage in some of the discourse that we are in. But this is the complication. I kind of want them to do that on my terms. I don't want them to come into that conversation and overtake it or layer it with a normative narrative. I want them to see it for what it is, that actually we can say, no, we know this shit. So you don't need to comment, or you just need to reflect and understand. And that's kind of my wish. Do you want some more compliments, you two?
Yes, always. This is Nina.
Get ready. Fia says, love, love, love. It needs more gatekeepers like you, hotties. So yeah, not just a cerebral and intellectual compliment, but it all works. Then a comment from Jenny. This is a comment on the whole conference, or the parts that I could make it to. So first of all, goes to the conference team. I want to thank you so much for making this whole thing happen. I didn't have contact to other disabled artists until now, or at least not artists whose disability I knew about, as not all disabilities are visible or otherwise directly clear. Being neurodivergent and grappling for quite a few years with the question of what that actually means for me, it is only quite recently that I started seeing myself as disabled and understanding lots of my struggles I have had as caused by ableism, both external and internalized. My contact to other neurodivergent folks until now has been mostly via internet. While this is online now too, I do feel excited that at least we have the possibility to connect to. What touches me a lot in hearing everyone's stories is how, despite the disabilities and itself and the details of part 2, we are excluded. Details of how we are excluded are different. The structural experiences and how they affect us emotionally, socially, economically is so similar. I was actually crying quite a lot because of the overwhelming feeling of coming home to a community that I didn't even know existed. Besides that, Criptonite, here is my compliment. So many things resonated. My mind branching out to write this long general comment whilst listening was kind of instigated by what you talked about. So thank you for making me articulate my gratefulness, and thanks for this invitation to reach out. I am definitely a person that sometimes needs extra invitations. Well, you have them here, Jenny. Thank you for that comment.
Nina speaking. Well, yes, thank you both. I also share a lot of, I have also attended several events of this conference, and I also share the feeling that Jenny feels about like kind of a homely or cozy community feeling that you, Noah, and Kate have really built. And I mean, we're big fans of intellectual and not intellectual comments. I just want to say.
This is Edwin speaking. I'm amazed that I heard the term gatekeeper for the first time, and I was actually proud. Yeah, I wanted to say something else, but now I forgot. Carry on.
Noah, would you like to read Carrie's comment?
Yes, and also like to say before that I feel for me it was also very nice to see in this conference, and maybe that's what made me most proud of, and that put a little bit of tears in my eyes, that we managed to create a space where I had the feeling that people we already knew and sort of as community felt welcome to come, but also people I never was in contact with, or maybe nobody of us was ever in contact with, felt like they could come to this space and to just have a look at the community and engage with the community, and maybe hopefully for the future find some community. So that really touched me as well. To Carrie's comment, loving the conversation on the topic of people contacting us for contacts with disabled performers. Often the call is way too specific, since casting agents don't understand the extent of lack of access to training. They will ask for someone with a specific impairment, age, race, gender presentation, etc. There might only be someone, in brackets, trained actor, who fits this criteria in the whole US. This speaks to the need of opening up theatrical form.
Totally agree.
Yes.
Yes. This is Nina speaking. So Edwin actually has a funny, well, I think it will be funny comment on that.
This is Edwin speaking. This instantly reminded me of this call that I got where I was asked to play a part in a movie, and they were looking for a disabled actor. The disability did not match with mine at all, and the script was also full of ableism and fat phobia and a bunch of other stuff that made me want to tear my eyes out. And I mean, so I think what was really important there was that I realized that when these calls go out, theaters have to know that, or theaters have to be flexible with that, and that even okay, they might not be able to replicate the specific vision they had in their minds, but by actually listening to our actors' needs and adapting the scripts accordingly, they can create much more resonating and important work. And so, and I had no qualms telling the specific director that I think this is garbage and that I don't think I'm gonna do it for this reason. And then they actually wanted to have a conversation with me. I decided not to answer at all because I was super busy. But I feel like that is the way to go in these particular circumstances. We're like, hey, I might not fit the description 100%, but let's meet each other halfway and see if we can create something more resonant instead.
Yeah, I mean, this is Nina speaking. I think like one thing to avoid that is just we need more projects with disabled people who have creative authority within the project, who are like making we need more projects where disabled people are creating their own aesthetic and creative visions, and less projects where non-disabled people use their vague idea of what disability is to justify their mediocre, basic artworks.
Agreed.
Kate added, I meant to say that Criptonite is creating Crip theoretical forms that are more open.
Thank you, Carrie.
100% yes.
I wonder, Nina and Eddie, if you will just indulge me quickly. So yesterday we played Crip Pleasures with very brilliant Tanya Earhart, who led us in a session. And I've been secretly messaging Tanya in the chat, who's here. And I wonder if I can invite you just to do one letter. So Eddie, do you know Crip Pleasures game?
This is Edwin speaking. I do not know the game.
So Nina does. So we're going to give you a letter of the alphabet chosen by Tanya, and then you have to tell us one of your Crip pleasures that begins with that letter. So to give an example, when it was A yesterday, Tanya chose access, intimacy. And for I or E, Noah chose ice cream. So it can be whatever. But just in this last minute, if you will indulge us, Tanya, the instigator of the Crip Pleasures game, has given you the letter H.
H.
Yeah. She's not giving you an easy one.
No.
This is Edwin speaking. I was secretly hoping for the letter N so I could say naps.
I thought you were going to say Nina. Okay, but I have one.
Okay.
So this is Nina speaking. With H, I would, for me, definitely say hands, in terms of hand holding, maybe figuratively hand holding that we do in community building, also very often literal hand holding, maybe also as part of access intimacy. I've had a lot of hand holding, literal hand holding in the last weeks or months at medical appointments in hospital. And as a disabled artist who has partially paralyzed legs, I just work a lot with my hands. They're like my main tool to work with in all areas, and I actually love that.
Thank you, Nina. Thanks so much. Eddie, you've had some time to think. So
yes, I also thought of one, and I'm going to go with a very me thing, which is hedonism.
Wow.
I feel like it's super healing and revolutionary to just give yourself the space to indulge in whatever you need at a current moment, within doses, of course. But yeah, just indulge. We've all earned it.
love that. Thank you both for indulging me and Tanya in that, who I'm sure is secretly reclining in her boudoir somewhere, and very glad to hear her Crip Pleasure game being played out.
We love playing that.
We did.
I think that's like a lovely end note, which just with an eye on the time and all our energy resources is yeah, now that I finally, that I unfortunately have to end this conference, but not before saying a big thank you. Of course, a thank you to all the artists who have been involved during these 5 days, who made this conference happen, who were the ones building the community with us. Kate and I could never have done that alone. You've all been amazing. And also to all our interpreters and captioners, specifically Oya and Kathleen, the sign language interpreters, and Jill and Barbara, the simultaneous language interpreters who have been with us for the whole 5 days for every session, but also the whole team of captioners who have been on board during various sessions. We couldn't have done that without you and without your patience and without your support. So thank you a lot. I would like to give a very special shout out to my colleague Anna Riga, who is the non-disabled person you want to have as a colleague, as a Crip person, because she is asking for the access and she is reflecting on her privileges, and she is willing to do that work again and again and fight on our side for our rights and for disabled and deaf-led spaces at all times. Also a big shout out to Rita Massa and Cassandra Wedel, our deaf co-curators, who created a beautiful program for and by deaf artists on Friday. And last but not least, our conference assistant who have been on continuous supporting us, Conny Walter, Gina Jeske, and Olivia Hotz. So yeah, I hope I didn't forget anyone, but of course, all of you who joined us today, but also who joined us during the whole conference, who contributed to ask questions or who were just there with us in the room. And yeah, I actually can't wait to hear, to see, to witness what this conference will spark in our communities.
Noa, thank you. And I echo all those thanks. And I just would like to take a moment from me, but also I think from everybody, to thank you for every meeting that we push back for brain fog or fatigue or families or life, and for every time we started a meeting with a cup of tea and eating breakfast, or every Saturday or Sunday that we met. It was so much valued, the space that you created, and I really want to acknowledge all the work that you've done across speaking multiple languages and wearing multiple professional and creative hats in this process. You're wonderful, and I thank you.
Thanks, back to you. And I think now it's just a big wave and virtual hugs and kisses to the Crip communities out there. And we love to see you. Yes?
Sorry, this is Nina speaking. Can we do some kind of virtual applause for Noa and Kate in some way? Like, you know, in whatever way you want to do that. But I just feel like we should give you a big round of applause for doing so well and for creating this amazing conference.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a good night, a good rest wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.